and then send out all the posts. How's your morning going?
Good. I had an HVAC guy here this morning. I had a
good.
recap on the candidate interview I did.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm drinking some lukewarm tea because I.
Oh, good. just what you want at 11 a.m.
Yeah, we have one of those we got one of those like water filter. Those like 5-gallon water jugs.
Yeah.
One of the little machines that'll like just keep like good filtered water on hand. It's got the heating, like you can dispense hot water. And I never used it for it until today. I was like, oh, like instead of boiling water in a tea kettle, maybe I can just use this, and it's not hot. It's like 150 degrees. So it's just like super lukewarm.
Oh man, that's a bummer. I feel like so I've been a little bit sick this week, and so whenever I'm sick, I just like drink a lot of things because in my mind that makes you better, right?
Yeah.
But now I just have to pee all the time. So sick and I'm peeing constantly.
Yeah, there you go.
That's great. Anyway.
Have you seen, speaking of hot water, have you seen the new Fellow coffee machine?
I have not. This is just going
to be I don't know how new it is, but they just released their own like automatic drip coffee maker.
Gosh darn it. That makes me actually kind of mad.
Better than manual pour overs though.
I'm sure it is. So here's the problem. You and I are both coffee snobs a little bit, right? We are going to talk about React Router 7, by the way, if anyone's watching. But you and I are both coffee snobs a little bit. The reality is like manual methods actually aren't like that great because there is so much room for you to mess up. So theoretically, a machine absolutely can do it better. But so many machines are so terrible that doing it manually is better. And it's also like, right, it's the rhythm, it's the ritual. That's kind of why. But anyway, my wife keeps talking about, like periodically has talked about wanting to get a coffee machine. And I'm like, you don't make the coffee, I make the coffee. So I don't know why you want to do this.
What impact
so she just had a birthday. She's about to have a birthday, but she just got her presents. And her mom bought her a coffee machine. So apparently behind my back, she was asking for a machine. And now you tell me there's a machine I might actually like believe in.
Yeah. Oh, that's a bummer.
I'm so like, mad now.
So she just got like just sort of like a standard run of the mill automatic.
So. I really don't know even what it was. I think she got it on Amazon.
So we have the as a wedding present. I was in the same thing. Like I prefer the manual coffee stuff, but as a wedding present, my cousin, who's also a bit of a coffee snob, got us the Chemex branded pour over machine. But I forget what the name of it. But it essentially is like you stick your Chemex in there, it heats the water, and it does like it does it in spurts to do the bloom and all that. And it's good, right? It's like it makes a good cup of coffee. It's much better than a pour over or the drip machine. It's noticeably better when I do like a hand pour. But on mornings when I don't feel like I have the time or I'm rushed, I love it. It's an awesome addition. But I'm reading about this new Fellow machine, and people are like, it's actually better than what I can do. I'm like, man, I don't need another coffee thing.
Right. That's so funny. Does it? I assume it's not a grinder as well because it costs basically what the grinder costs. I'm trying to look.
No, it's like $400. So
that's crazy, man. So it's like you got to get like, the grinder and this. So
you're almost
$100 to $1,000.
But it's all like programmable to like how long of a bloom and like what type are you doing, like burst pours and like all sorts of stuff. So like I think where they're headed is that like a coffee roaster could like ship you their coffee beans and say, hey, set your machine to this profile, and that works best for these specific beans. Like,
dude, that's wild. So I spend all day talking to the computer to get it to give me code so then I can make money and go home. And then now I go talk to my coffee machine that I use my money to buy to then make me. Exactly. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's awesome. Okay. Maybe we should talk coffee. Yeah. We're here to talk about React Router. So this kind of originated. Matt and I were kind of talking about like the upgrade experience from, because we kind of a weird thing. React Router 7 is like we're merging what Remix was into React Router 7, but we kind of have this weird dissonance where you have like two different groups of people coming to React Router 7. So you have React Router 6 users, and they're just trying to upgrade like to 7. What's up, Alan? We're going from 6 to 7, so they just want that upgrade. Maybe they just want to keep using React Router as like a routing library. They're happy with it as that. They like that we continue to improve it and make it better. It's used by, it's got like 10 million weekly downloads. Like it's a pretty popular thing just on its own. And then there's people coming from Remix who just want what's new in React Router 7 because it has everything Remix had and a couple new features like pre-rendering and like some type generation stuff. So some stuff like that. And then there's also like people who are going to get to React Router 7 and they're like, well, I now want all those frameworky features. So we just kind of wanted to go through a little bit of all of that, mostly like the 6 to 7 and then the 7 to like Vite plugin framework kind of upgrade. So we're going to kind of walk through that together. Matt's kind of I've done an example of this. Matt's done an example of this. We're going to kind of do one together. Hopefully we'll get some questions and we're going to try and figure out what we specifically need to document in terms of like, documentation to make that more clear. Everyone's situation will be a little bit different, obviously, but there's going to be a big through line of like, these are the general steps you want to go and kind of the recommended way to make this pretty smooth and painless. So anything you want to add before we jump into it, Matt?
No, I think you nailed the point that like, this is a gap on our end right now. Like we have not yet documented well enough in one location, right? And V7 is not out yet. So it's something that we're going to do before stable, but like, we have a huge community of users out there and they're all in very different spots in like their application architecture. And we need to have like one really good document somewhere that's like, hey, like if you're running React Router 5 and Webpack, how do you get to V7? What's your path, right? And if you're already on V6 and Vite, you still have a path. It's just going to be shorter. So it's that like, I've always called it like the Remix Highway, which now has to be the React Router Highway, but like, my intention, I've always looked at it as like, there should be a path for everyone. And for the most part, you should be able to go as far down that path as you want and stop.
Yeah.
Like you don't have, like, yes, you should get to V7, right? We're not going to support V6, in perpetuity.
Yeah.
But if you get to V7 and you decide that the Vite plugin doesn't have features your application needs, like that should be fine. Right. If you adopt the Vite plugin, but you decide that SSR is not something your app needs, like that's also fine. So to me, like, we just document this road and every step on that path should be iterative. You should be able to like easily do it without some crazy multi-month feature branch. And you go as far as your team needs. Like, I don't think we are in the position to say like every single React Router 7 app in the world has to be using the Vite plugin and SSRing and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm looking forward to like really nailing what that doc looks like and like identifying where are our users today, right? Meet them where they're at and find what that path looks like.
Sweet. I feel like, as you were describing that, I was like, man, we need Tim to make like a graphic for this. I feel like that would be so lovely. So
can be like a Tron futuristic highway diagram.
Gosh, he would love that. Yeah, we got to get him on that. All right, cool. Sweet. Okay, awesome. Well, let's just jump into it. I think that was a great overview of what we're trying to do. Alum says it's weird seeing you not a picture for the first time. So apparently he's never seen you on.
Oh, really? He's never seen me live?
Yeah. It's very weird that we know people through like text for like years.
It is. Before we ever even met them. Okay. All right. So we got this shared. So this is the thing. I want Restream to fix this. I hate like looking at the camera over here to see like the chat in your face and then like looking here to see what's being demoed.
Yeah, you can try and like narrow down what you're showing, and I don't know, but it's always
and like keep it on the thing. Yeah, but I need this window, I need the terminal so folks know what's going on. Totally. I need the code. But, okay, so we're gonna look at. I created a little demo. This is a straight fork of in React Router's repo. We have this examples folder, and we've got a bunch of things. A lot of these are from V5 and V6, so they're a little older. Yeah. We do have this data router one. This is the app we're going to work on today. Mostly just showing like we built this when 6.4 was released. So it's the pretty simple usages of like, here's what a loader is, here's what an action is, here's how to use fetchers and deferred data, like the 4 things in here. So cool. I copied that over to just sort of a very simple Vite app here, right? And I've got the code, so we'll just look at it there. But it is
cool.
Really simple Vite config, right? Using React plugin. It is using TypeScript, nothing really fancy going on there.
I think you might want to bump up your font size and everything, just so you know.
Make that a little bigger here. Because it's just a Vite spa, you kind of manage your own index HTML here.
Okay, cool.
Vite's going to take care of all that stuff. The app is going to render right here. And then source wise, I actually collapsed it to just one file for simplicity. It's
nice.
I think it's 2 over there. It's like you've got your main and then your app.tsx. I just pulled everything in here, right? So we've got pretty simple React client-side rendering. We're using a data router, so create browser router. We've got our routes config right here. All the future flags on, right? We'll talk about sort of like that's sort of a prerequisite to do this V7 upgrade. And then each route, like all the components, I can actually just fold this down, are just right here in the file, right? So for our layout route, our home route, our to-dos route.
Nice.
So in your application, right, these are probably already sitting in some kind of organized set of files, but we're going to do this sort of commit by commit. And this would be hopefully something that your team can do one commit at a time, deploy it, ship it to production. Like we don't want this, like I got to do the whole thing in a feature branch. So we're going to show you sort of like how you can do this iteratively to get from this type of a V6 app today to a V7 pre-release app using the Vite plugin.
Cool. That sounds good. One quick question someone did have is they said, are there many features missing for what you want to release on V7? Yeah, do you want to touch on that?
No, not really. The only thing we're looking at now is minor things where we want to backport something. If we think V7's weird or feels awkward in some way, and we decide we want to make a change, we're backporting some of those features to V2. So an example of that is like the functions in your route module, so links and meta and headers, and now in V7 with the type gen, your components also get props. Those, like the parameters to those functions are sort of all over the place. Like some of them get data, some don't. Some of them get the location, some don't. Some get a request. We're trying to like clean that up. So we're backporting some of that. We'll put it in Remix V2 behind a future flag so that you can opt in there and then have a seamless migration to V7.
Nice. But there's missing features in Remix, not necessarily React.
Yeah, and that like I don't call that as like that's not a feature so much.
It's true.
Just like it's cleanup, and it's cleanup that has to happen in a breaking change. And this major semver makes sense as a place to do that. But to make it seamless, we have to go to Remix and put it behind a future flag.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, other functionality wise, I mean, V7 is pretty feature complete at this point.
Yeah, there are. I know a few people, so I'll just address these. The 2 things I see come up a lot, maybe 3, is like 1, middleware / like server context. So people have been asking like, is that coming? When's that coming? When can I have that? And then like RSC, React server components. Do you want to address both of those in our strategy there?
Both. I mean, ASAP, as far as I know, like I know folks are chomping at the bit for them. I know I'm personally like, I want to ship middleware. We've written middleware.
Yeah. I mean, Shopify has needs for it as well. So internally we're getting that.
We just, basically we wrote it probably a year ago at this point, and we realized that middleware without the concept of single fetch didn't actually solve the problem we wanted to solve, right? It cleaned up your code. It did not actually reduce the number of accesses to your database or anything like that. So middleware kind of took a backseat to single fetch. So now that that's out, middleware is waiting for V7, but I fully expect that's in a 7.1 or a 7.2. Like that's a pretty early feature.
Cool.
RSC, I think, is in a similar boat, but a little more pseudo blocked by maybe Vite 6 and React 19 stabilizing, stuff like that. So I know we want to get that shipped sooner rather than later, but hopefully it'll be in one of those early 7.x releases.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, Akamat, kind of a follow-up of, will React Router V7 be delayed until Remix catches up, or it'll be released separately?
For things like, yes, for these like API surface changes, it will be, because we want to ship React Router 7, and like until we make sure that these future flags fit into Remix, like we might know what we want in React Router 7, and then when we go to implement it in Remix, we find out we can't quite do it, and that could always drive the API service in React Router 7 to change a little bit. So we want to make sure we don't ship a React Router 7 and then find out, shoot, we need to make a slight change here, and then we're shipping a breaking change in React Router 7 very quickly. I think we will hold off on the stable until we get some of these things backported. But other than that API surface kind of cleanup, I'm not aware of any other things we're backporting.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of where my mind was at too. So I'm glad to hear that. Okay, cool. There's a request to bump your font size one more time, and then I think we're
one more. Oh man, I'm gonna run out of room here.
I know, right? I always, whenever I like do a presentation or something, I always practice at everything like super bumped up just to make sure I'm like in that space. because nothing is
Get
worse
everything.
than.
And we'll
Where
probably,
is anything?
I don't think we'll be in here much, but I'll go ahead and make that one bigger too. Cool.
All right.
All right. Now we can kick off. So I wrote up just a little README here. My intent is that this repo is going to stick around. We'll do this today in here. We'll kind of go commit by commit. I doubt they'll be as clean as they could be on the live stream. So I'll go back through here afterwards. I'll probably do some rebasing and like clean them up. But this repo, if folks want to like copy that link down, or if Brooks, you want to drop it.
I'll go find it and drop it.
I'm hoping this can just stay out there. And the idea is that your team can come along and look at each commit in this upgrade process and be like, all right, where are we in this? We got to start here. All right, what did this commit do? Let's go do that in our app, ship it. But the prerequisites are essentially you're on React Router v6. You're not doing any manual SSR. You have just got a v6 SPA. You're using Vite. So if you're not there yet, if you're on Webpack, that's one of the prerequisites is get your app over to using Vite. You're on the latest versions of v6 and Vite and TypeScript, all that good stuff. React 18, hopefully soon to be React 19. Not sure where that stands at this point.
Actually, I do have a question about that. Even if 19 is out, like you can still use 18, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. We won't. Even if they like ship 19 stable tomorrow, I highly doubt we would like it would be bad.
We'll
7
we'll have 18
on React 19, right? Yeah. We shouldn't let like, I don't know, we don't like, just like we don't want to wait for like Vite 6 to stabilize. You shouldn't have to have like other things blocking your ability to like adopt our library.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's hard how integrated these things are, but we really do try to do a good job of keeping them as like you still get to choose what you're using with saying like, okay, from this version on, like saying with Node, like we don't support 16 at this point or 18, one of those.
We actually just decided to drop 18 for V7.
Oh, I see. So V7 won't do it. Yeah. So
18
eventually you got to drop stuff.
It goes end of life in like April.
Okay.
Like technically it's still in maintenance LTS, but 20 has been active LTS for a year now, last October. So it's like that seems long enough. And if our Semver lines up pretty close with an end of life, I think we're happy to drop it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Okay, cool. Okay, and then
cool. Yeah, last two things, just you have to have adopted all the future flags. So we've got all 5 of them turned on here. These are the 5 V6 future flags. Sweet. And then you've got to be using a data router, which is you're using Crate Browser Router, and you're rendering with router provider. You're not still using browser router or memory router or anything like that from early versions of V6.
Cool.
So with that, the upgrade process is going to be, so we talked at one point, we had, let me go pull up a Remix template just to show an API we considered and are not going to ship. But we at one point, here's the entry client. We had thought about this component is called Remix Browser in Remix v2. It's changed to Hydrated Router in React Router v7. At one point, we thought like, oh, what if we just put a routes prop on the Hydrated Router component, and you could just come over here, grab these routes from your React Router v6 app, and just like drop them in there. We actually started implementing that, and that was going to be the path. And really the way I look at that is like, take your working v6 code and drop it into a v7 app and let it run as is, right? Like that's one way to make that migration really smooth, is make v7 smart enough to like respect v6 code or v6 paradigms. What we found out is that that's actually really tricky if you have like the file system routing stuff. So it's really hard to be like, okay, the server knows about a set of routes because I had them on the file system. And then in the process of hydrating my server rendered application, I like now all of a sudden discover some new set of routes in addition to routes that were already rendered on the server, and getting those to merge like in a non-error prone way is actually really tricky. So we decided not to ship that. And instead, I think the alternate approach is, rather than make the v7 application understand a v6 routes prop, the other way around is make your v6 app look a lot more like what v7 will expect while you're still in v6. And that's something that requires no API changes for us to do. We've actually sort of already built that path. So we don't have to like change anything. And there's just a different way of sort of looking at this upgrade.
Okay. Interesting.
So what we're going to do is, like I said, the idea is iterative, a bunch of small changes you can commit and deploy. There's a lot more kind of discussion about like why we feel this is important in our docs. I'll link off to that. But we're going to go in our V6 app, we're going to move our routes into route modules. And like we can do that route by route. We can ship and deploy them individually. Once they're in route modules, it's going to be very easy to upgrade to React Router V7 and then adopt the Vite plugin. So that's why I say, like, make your V6 app look like a V7 app so that that step to V7 becomes much smaller.
Cool. Okay, I do have one question. Like, is there any way, say I wanted to take a different, I was trying this actually earlier. Say I want to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna have like a splat route. Like I'm gonna set up a remix app and have a splat route. And on that, I'm just gonna create browser router and like a router in that. That seems impossible, right? But,
you can't quite do that because there can only be one router on a page, right? There's a singular router, single source of truth. And when you're rendering a remix app and you render that hydrated router, it's internally got its own router. So you can't then create another browser router and stick it, because now you have two things fighting over the URL, basically. There is talk of right now we don't allow you to nest even like a memory router. We just don't allow you to nest routers at all, period, at the data router layer. There is talk, and I'm pushing for this in V7. I would like us, because you can't nest a browser router in a browser router, right? They're both dealing with the URL. There isn't really a technical reason you can't nest a memory router in a browser router. And that's a limitation I'd like to see us remove, because there are use cases for that. Like I want to run, a wizard, a form wizard, a little memory router inside of a page. Maybe I don't want the URL changing per step, but I want to go through like a 6-step flow. That's a really useful case to have like a little memory router in there. So I'm hoping that that's a feature we add in V7. But for now, the only way to kind of nest through a splat route is to use descendant routes. So like the routes component, you can nest those in a remix splat route. They're just unable to take advantage.
But then you don't have loaders and you don't have all the, I get it now. Cool. All right. Thank you.
All right. So let's start. We'll go route by route. So we've got all these routes defined in our tree. They are all in the critical bundle, all the components for everything. So when we load this app, we get everything. That's, by default, that's not the most performant way, but for small apps like this, it's generally fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually create route modules. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to make a folder called routes. And we're going to make a file. Let's start with, why don't we start like bottom up? So let's start with like the to-do ID route. So I'm going to make a file in here called to-do.tsx. And I'm going to go copy. You see the to-do route has a loader and a component. Go find those. Let's collapse. Do this fold all again. Let's go find the to-do. So here is our to-do route. So I'm just going to like basically grab the entire implementation of this and pull it over to a separate file.
Nice. Okay.
I'll put that in here. And then I'm going to do two things. One, I was calling this to-do loader, right? It was in a scope. It had to be identified. Now that it's its own file, this can just be a loader.
Okay, cool.
But the other thing important is that this is a client-side loader, right? So the Vite plugin is aware of SSR. So we don't actually want to export this as a loader, because eventually when we go to use the Vite plugin, that's going to then think like, oh, it's a server loader. So we want to export this as a client loader. That's one just sort of nuance. Like everything in your SPA, like loaders are by definition client loaders in your SPA. Remix actually creates two different routers. It creates a router on the server and it gives it your server loader. It creates a separate router on the client, gives it the client loader. So there is more going on there because it's more capable. For the purposes of this migration, you just want to change all of your loaders to be export client loader so that they're running only on the client.
Got it. So you're saying that if I wanted to just use React Router, but I wanted server-side rendering, I would have to set up two different routers, one on my server, one on my client, and manage.
If you want to do it manually, yes.
So,
and there is an
example of what
how to do that, but it's tricky. I wouldn't recommend it. Remix does a lot under the hood for you there.
The
Vite plugin.
Cool.
So let's go. What else do we need here? We need, there's a little sleep function in here that for simplicity.
I just like pulled that out into a library. Yeah, perfect.
And sleep.ts. They all use this. Put that over here. So now let's pull in and sleep. /sleep, right? Yeah. And then loader function args, get to-dos. I don't know why it always wants to do this. I must have
it's a default. Yeah, I ran into this as well, and someone was just like, it's a tsconfig default.
Update that from React Router and grab that from React Router.
Nice.
Cool. Okay. And then the other thing we have to do, there's two things. We have to make the component export the default export. That's the thing the Vite plugin expects, is that what you export as the default is your component. So now we've changed no code, right? Like this is the exact same code we shipped before. We've just put it into its own file, exported the loader as a client loader, exported the component as the default. Now we can come over here and we're going to have some sleep stuff here. So unfold, we fix these sleep errors. That's the to-do that's expected. Here
you go.
Pull that in from sleep. Cool. So now this is like, hey, I don't have these things anymore. You yanked them away. So one thing we could do here, right, is we could just say, okay, I'm going to go import client loader as to loader and default as to from. I can't do it. To do.
How did it a second ago? There we go.
That's the.
Is that how you do it? Oh yeah, you're right.
And then from whoops, it's ./route/to.
Okay,
that should fix that, right? So so now let's go ahead and run this. Let's make sure that our app is working. There we go. 5173. Cool. Over to the to-dos. I'm gonna click on one. Yeah, this is the to-do, right? This is showing me like the specific to-do. So we haven't changed anything. We haven't shrunk our bundle, right? All this stuff is still imported on the critical path. Some unused imports up here you can get rid of.
Nice.
So that's an option, but you can also you can get one step closer to what Remix and the Vite plugin is doing in your V6 app by taking advantage of the lazy function. And that's essentially what Remix is doing. The Vite plugin, you're going to get automatic code splitting. You can do manual code splitting. So the more performant way to do this is to actually say, hey, I've got a lazy module for this. I'm going to say,
oh, okay. I don't think I've actually messed with our way of doing this.
Is essentially, lazy is a function that will run at the time we need that route. So it won't actually run until we render that route. And it's an async function that just, it runs in the, the loading navigation state. It runs right before the loader runs or potentially in parallel. But it says, all right, whenever I need this, I'm going to go get this route. And this function is just supposed to return effectively stuff that gets spread onto here.
Oh, nice.
Right? So it's supposed to return an object that has properties that you would put on your route.
Okay.
So what this is going to return is a client loader and something called default. And that's not what we want, right? So we have to do a little sort of like property mapping on this. So we're going to write a little function here. It says, then we're going to get a module. And then here we're going to say return. And we could list these out one by one. We know what these are. So we could say, hey, loader is, remember, we are creating our own client-side thing. So it's client loader in that file for the purposes of eventually the Vite plugin, right? That's for our migration. This is just a fully client-side manual SPA. So it's just a loader as far as this routing. So we're going to put the client loader on the loader prop, and we're going to put the component as m.default.
Okay, cool. Got it. So we're doing the mapping manually, but now we
property mapping.
So that's nice. Yeah.
So now that should work. I'm going to go over here. Start back at the home page and let me pull up DevTools here and get this so we can actually see what's going on here as well. Come on.
It's like the smallest amount of space to actually that darn thing.
Doesn't even want to.
Oh no.
Now it's just let me just.
It's stuck.
It's it seems like it's just stuck in that.
What? I've never seen this. Maybe zoom back out on it. Maybe the zoom mess something up. I don't know.
Back out here.
Oh my god!
Weird.
That's so dumb.
Okay. Well, why don't we'll put it on the side.
Yeah, it works.
And then
a little more vertical space.
Bigger here. Cool. So reload. How do I? Oh, I hate.
No, that's so frustrating.
That's weird.
I wonder if it's like
I've got a
restreams.
Chrome update too, so I feel like
I wonder if it's
related to that. So let's put it back down to the bottom, and we will just deal with it. We'll just do some
lots of scrolling.
Yeah, very weird. So put that back over there. Okay, so now what we should see, if I go to to-dos, we should not have anything, and then we should see when I go here, there's the lazy loading, right? So we didn't actually load what I like to call it the route definition. I refer to these things like things that are required to match a route on the URL. I call that the route definition is here. So that kind of defines like I have a route and it is at /todos:_ID. Okay. I call these the route implementation.
Yep.
And that's actually like, what does this route actually do? What data does it load? What does it render? So I like to think of those as two separate things. Lazy allows you to offload the entire route implementation to another file. We still know at app startup that there exists a route at todos/ID. We just don't know how to do anything. And then not until you navigate to that route are we actually going to bother to go pull that file in.
Okay, that makes sense. And just a quick question, like you could now at this point, like if you put a prefetch on the links for the to-do, they would automatically load in the module for like this to-do route.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's why we have that lazy like on that actual definition, so it knows what to do. I guess not just for that, but it also knows.
Yeah, you're talking like the link component prefetch.
Yeah.
So it does require the Vite plugin to do that, though. You can't do that in this setup. We're in V6 without it.
Okay.
That's not actually prefetching. It's kind of coupled to lazy, but it's prefetching like the whole module that the Vite plugin spit.
Got it.
Okay. Requires the automatic code splitting to be aware of that. You could certainly build this, like you could build your own link prefetch.
Yep.
To do this stuff. But again, that's why like we recommend using the Vite plugin, because it just does a lot of the stuff for you under the hood that you could otherwise do manually if you wanted to write and maintain all that code.
Okay, cool. And related, Alam had a quick question. Would this work the same way if you wrap the default component in lazy and passed it as a default?
Yep. Yeah, it should. Okay. It should. Just all that matters is that you get the component you want to render returned from here under the property component.
Okay, that makes sense. But this is nice. Yeah. And I think I see where you're going, because I think you already spoiled it for me on Discord. So this is going to be better.
So that's one. What we can do is we can actually ship this, right? So I'm going to, I want these to be sort of like isolated commits. So again, this is one developer on your team spending an hour or two in an afternoon to move one singular route over, merge it and ship it, right? There's no feature branch or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and just get commit. That is right behind the restream hover. There you go.
That's so annoying. You can hide that, the right button.
Oh, you can?
As well. Yeah.
Hide.
That's like a Mac feature, I think, which is annoying. I hate that shows up. Whatever.
To a route module. Awesome. And I forgot to add a file, didn't I? Yep, I forgot to add routes and sleep. So just amend that onto there. Cool. Okay, so that's one. So now the rest of these we can go ahead and do. They're pretty similar, right? So we're going to have to do this same stuff on each route. We're going to pull it out to a route file. I'm going to, for ease of that, I'm going to extract this to a little utility, stick this up top. Function convert. Just take M as a module. And then what we really want to do to make this a little more robust, like we knew that to-do route only had a client loader and a component. We actually want this to be a little more robust. So we're going to do like, we're going to pull some things off. So let's see what needs to be mapped. We have to map client loader. We have to map client action if we have one. We have to map the default. And I'm going to like rename that to component. And then I think everything else, right? So rest. I think everything else can go straight in. So I'll just say like,
that's awesome.
Rest loader is client loader, component is component. And
you're missing one period.
There we go.
And this is nice because this basically will ensure that your route module is actually the correct names and everything, so you don't
forget. Yeah. Essentially, you can write this to ensure that you're putting the right names in this module that the Vite plugin will expect. So now we've got that. This we can just say like, hey, any. Yep. Don't kill me. I cheated. So now we can just pull that in and convert. Cool. So let's do the to-dos route next. We'll work our way up. So we've got to-dos action, to-dos loader, got a component. This one's also got an error boundary. So let's find the to-dos section here. Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
I swear, there we go. I don't use any of these like weird keyboard shortcuts. I have like 3 that I know of. That is there's the component. And then now we're grabbing the boundary. And then we've got a little reused component to display a to-do item in there. So we're going to grab all of that, come over here, to-dos.tsx, drop that in there. And we do the same kind of things in here that we did before. So we're going to first bigger so I can see it. To pull in some of the things we're missing. So sleep.
All right, so Alan got mad at me last time I did a stream when I did this exact thing. So if you hit add all missing imports, it should do them all correctly. I don't know if you do this on purpose, but
I do.
That's great. I have no issues with it.
A deep mistrust of computers doing that stuff for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that good at to-dos? Yeah,
that's fair.
So yeah, I've sometimes.
I didn't mean to take your ritual away from you. You know.
Yeah, no, it's just I do it, and then I just need to like really go back and be like, did you screw that up? Right?
Yeah,
like,
it kind of.
I screw it up with something. I get angry when the computer screws it up for me.
Yep. Agreed.
But yeah, that does save time. And now, okay. So same as before, we are going to rename this to client action as our export, because it's now like it's scoped here. It doesn't need that prefix. And then we want a client, so it runs client side. We are going to make the loader a client loader. We are going to make the component the default export. And we're going to change our boundary to error boundary. Same, the name that we want to put on the route definition for React Router. These are just sort of internal things. We don't even need to export this. I don't think we use that anywhere else. Cool. So we got to-dos. Now we should be able to come over here. And same thing. We're going to delete the entire implementation. And I'm going to just this up. To-dos.
That's awesome.
So at this point, we should be working. And let's go back over here. Yeah, everything looks good. We'll start back at the home page. Make sure that we can click through to to-dos. There we are. A bit bigger.
Probably see if those actions actually work too.
Yeah, well, let's see what we did. Console error. Let's actually print the error then. Routes to-dos convert. Oh, you know what? I forgot one. Forgot to do the client action. So now, that's actually what's expected. This route, as far as the router knew, didn't have an action, and we just tried to send a fetcher to that route. Nice. So we got the client action on the action, and the rest I think should be fine. Let's go reload.
Cool. This is cool. Like I love that the story here right now is, even by doing this, like this feels a little fiddly, but it's not too bad once you set up the convert function. Because that kind of checking for you. And also it's like, if you were in lazy loading already, you're getting a new benefit that you maybe didn't even realize. So I like that as far as like a documentation and story. Because I did have someone complain on one of the social medias. There's too many now. Of just like, hey, this all just feels really fiddly. And what's the point? It's like,
and it's like, I think it's, that's not wrong, right? Like there's, and that's why I said, like, I don't think we've done a good enough job of documenting these steps in this order. Because like in my head, right, in our head, this is all super clear, right? Thinking about this and nothing about this for the past like 2.5 years.
This is kind of our lives.
It's a huge leap to expect that to be clear to anyone else, right? Unless you're like very up on the Discord and streams and stuff like that. So I think we've definitely dropped the ball a little bit on like what our vision of this upgrade path looks like. we've done a ton of work to make sure that it can be smooth and it can be done iteratively. And also that like, hopefully we're not forcing, changes on folks that don't come with an upside, right? So like folks were using like the old browser router and memory router. And like, yes, it's an API change to go to router provider, but that comes with like very real benefits as far as decoupling data fetching from rendering and all that stuff. And now going to the Vite plugin is another step, but it comes with very like real tangible benefits. So I think it's on us to explain like what each of these steps gives you and how to get there, like without having to go through a major rewrite.
Cool. We're being told that our convert doesn't handle the action yet, but I believe we just fixed that.
Yeah, I wonder if that was posted before we got there.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll find out if we have a problem because nothing will work. So
Mehdi saw the problem before we did.
I think that's true. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm probably behind. All right, sweet. Awesome. Did we test it again, or are you still cleaning up?
There you go. Delete.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool.
Beautiful. All right. Cool. Nice.
So now we can go ahead and again. Now we've done one more route. We can ship that. Right? So I'm going to go draw a line in the sand over here. We'll just see what our diff looks like. We've taken all this stuff, shifted it over to a new file, dropped that to do down to a lazy import, and then gotten rid of some of those. So get and let's just reuse this. Convert to do's route. Cool. So now we've done that a couple times. I'm going to just go ahead and do these next two in like one commit. So we're going to need a home.tsx, and we're going to need a defer.tsx. We're going to need a layout.tsx. So let's see. Layout has two of them. I'm actually, watch this. I am not going to pull this one over. And I'll show you in just a second here. So for the layout here, I'm just going to grab the component. So here we go to layout, post the component in, and then this is just a component, make it the default export. Use Alum's little trick here to add all, because these are actually all from React Router, not from relative files. So layout should be good. We'll go pull this guy. No, I should put this down here. So I want to show you real quick this. So that hydrate fallback is just this little guy that's like, hey, I'm doing my initial step, right? Data or whatever. It used to be the fallback prop on router provider prior to this partial hydration future flag. So you can read more about that, but that essentially lets you, like, you used to only be able to put your sort of fallback up at the root. With this, you can actually put that fallback anywhere you want in the tree. Data you're loading initially or critically. Generally for a spa, it's just going to be up at the very top. But now, if I go ahead and run this, you should see once that actually boots up. There you go. So that's performing initial data load. If I pulled this hydrate fallback out into the module, it wouldn't actually have anything there to load. Like it can't render that until it's loaded the initial critical JavaScript bundle. Once it loads that and it creates the router, it's then going to say, like, okay, in order to hydrate or in order to render the current URL, I need to go get this route module. And because I'm on the home page, so it would have to get this module and this route. It then has like another round trip in order to get the implementation of the hydrate fallback. So it can't even render that right up front.
Okay.
And then once it fetches the module, it would, I think, render this, I believe, during the loader execution. There's not one here. But so normally this, and this is nice, you can compose these together. You can put whatever parts of your route you want in the critical bundle can get defined up front critically. And then you can just offload whatever parts of it you don't want. So I always put the hydrate fallback in the critical so you can render that fallback skeleton, whatever spinner, as fast as possible.
Okay, cool.
The rest of them almost exclusively, you generally want to put everything off in the lazy one. Sometimes you want to split out. You can do something like this. You can say like loader, import to-dos, loader, right? Like you can parallelize depending on, like, let's say you have a loader that's 5 lines of code and then makes an expensive API call, and you've got a component that's 500 lines of code. you don't necessarily want to block the kickoff of the loader by the 5-line component. So if you define your loader here on the critical path, it'll actually run this function in parallel with this one.
Okay.
So you can say, all right, I'm going to put my loader in a standalone file. And again, this is the like manual code splitting that eventually you get from the Vite plugin.
Yep.
And this is one of the things that Mark's working on right now, is to actually split those client loaders out into their own files.
Right.
But
yeah.
This would allow you to run the loader in parallel, download a very small loader file, and then basically this would be like, then, you know, run it. Whatever, you would grab the function. You could kick off that loader fetch sooner and not wait for the entire component to come down.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right, cool. So let's do the home route next. Home just has, I think, 2 little things.
Straightforward, yeah.
Those. Export client loader. Export default function home. Pull all these in. And then, so home is now lazy. And then deferred. What's that? Deferred is a bunch of random numbers.
It's
very useful route.
Yeah, it's wild.
Defer, put that all in. Same thing. You.
Man, you're so trusting of the import all now.
I was expecting more. Where is sleep here? Was this not how sleep?
I don't think it sleeps at all.
Sleep kind of built in.
It just yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it works really well importing from libraries. I find that it sometimes doesn't work great importing from local stuff.
I agree. Yeah, and especially, well, it would do terrible with remakes because we have like 12 libraries that you import everything from. So fortunately, React routers.
Maybe that's why I use it less.
Yeah, we kind of created a beast that we're taming finally.
So same thing, client loader, default export, go back over to main. Go pull this guy down.
Nice. That's awesome. This also, I mean, the route definition was already pretty easy, but this makes it even easier to just follow.
Yeah. And like you said, it you know, hopefully what you're seeing is this is starting to look a little bit like routes TS, right? Like we're getting a little closer to what we want it to be in V7. And again, I'm going to keep that like, I need to get from A to B. We want that to be pretty small, both syntactically and just like how much work you have to do.
Yep. Makes sense.
Here's what I do wrong. You were calling, is there even pass to create root? Yeah, I think that was just a weird HMR.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
HMR, it's so nice, but I don't trust it at all. And so I just refresh every time anyway.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
And we can click on to do, still got our nested one and our deferred route. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's an expected error that will show how to handle errors. And I can revalidate. These should all update in tandem.
Yep.
Yeah,
nice.
Cool. All right. So we haven't broken anything. We have moved the rest of them over. So I'm going to get at that. Convert the rest of the routes to route modules. Cool. So I think that is step 1, right? So this is all, again, this is like, we're not on V7 yet, this is just our V6 app. We just do this during our normal sprints and we ship these to prod, keep working on features. In the meantime, we're not stopping development. We're just doing this bit by bit as we go along. If you've got 100 routes in your app, like you might do this over the course of a couple of months, right? And move them over little by little. And you're just doing that all in preparation for when you're ready to go to V7.
Yep. When we were when I was at HEB, this is actually a similar thing we did when we were trying to move to Next Pages router. We kind of did a similar thing. We said, okay, here's your get server side props, function or whatever, and like we had it set up. Like we had the SSR React router kind of set up or whatever, and so we had to do a very similar thing. So if this feels like you're making me do so much work, it's like this is the reality of going from like your homegrown framework to any framework, and honestly, like. It was pretty straightforward, I think. So like we did it and all our engineers figured it out pretty quickly. It wasn't super complicated. Of course, that was the Pages router. I don't know what the app router would be like. But I think our route modules are pretty straightforward. So, and
I think that like some of that too, like we've kept around, some of these, like we see these remix APIs and stuff that we have today. Like yes, there's this whole like Remix V3 thing kind of floating off in the ether, but like React Router V7 is going to be around for a long time, and we're keeping these APIs like very similar to what already exists, because we want to be able to keep you on that road of like, I've got this app and we've invested a lot of time in it. You know, nobody wants to be told to just like, hey, you just got to rewrite from scratch to a totally new paradigm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
All right. So step 2, now we can actually update to the pre-release. So we are on, what are we on? 627 right now, React Router DOM. We've collapsed all the packages in V7. So React Router DOM still exists. It's just a straight re-export of everything from React Router. So like you could still use it. We would recommend that you switch over to React Router. There probably will not be a React Router DOM V8. Like it's sticking around as a bit of like, you don't have to change all your code. But I'm going to uninstall, if I could type it right, React Router DOM. Man, I stink at typing.
You know what? That's okay. You have written the majority of React Router as it exists now. So I think you get a pass on your typing ability.
Then, we need, what are we on, 2?
That sounds right. Yeah, because the third one. Yeah.
Just for anyone watching, I'm not using the pre-tag. That would work, I think, right now, but we're still releasing React Router V6 stuff releases too, like as we're fixing bugs there and backporting things the same way we're backporting to Remix V2. So when we do a React Router V6 pre-release, it sort of hijacks the pre-tag. So that pre-tag on NPM is kind of constantly flipping between like a V6 pre-release or a V7. So if you're gonna try out the pre-release, I would always just go grab the latest full 7.00 pre-tag itself. This, I hate those. I'm gonna get rid of that. I actually don't, I think that this is actually potentially problematic. I think this sometimes, because there's no like actual 7 release now, I've seen this resolve to some really weird things. So I would also recommend use an exact.
Yeah, and also just don't trust package managers. They all suck. I don't know. It's so confusing.
Do this the real official way, right? I think it's
there you go. Yeah, that's probably the one we should actually put in the docs. Although
by the time that'll update it in package lock too, right? Okay, so now we're going to have a bunch of broken imports. I think we have a thing in the docs, but for the most part, you should be able to just replace. Make this a little bigger. From React Router DOM to from React Router in your code base. I don't think the semicolon matters. So I'm going to do this. It's going to make sure it gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different route files in my main. So just big find and replace, nice and easy. Looks like I left some of these unused imports in here from before. So we don't need those because those are all off in the files now. Sleep is off in the files. So now bring this back in. Let's see if React Router 7 works. So we made no code change. The only thing we did is change our dependency. Right. So a whole bunch of package lock changes, but we just changed our dependency and mass updated imports. But I think that is all we should have to do. 5173. Look at that. We upgraded the React Router.
Nice.
Oh, this is not. Oh, no. Yep. We
need to add.
We should have done that. Yeah. So we'll do that. We got rid of defer because you actually never needed it in React Router. You needed it in Remix. But yeah, so this is an API that is, and this hasn't shipped in V6 yet. It will like probably Monday. This is deprecated. So if we were doing this stream on like Tuesday and we were on React Router 6.28 or whatever we're about to release next week, we would have had a little strike through here and been like, hey, this thing is deprecated. You should move away from it. So this does not exist in V7 because you can just like return an object. We're not serializing promises over the wire. So we just don't need defer, period. So you can just return this object. These promises are going to be fine. I put a slash in up there. So all these promises, like we're running the loader in the browser and then we're handing those promises off to the component in the browser to render. There's no serialization step. So we did defer in Remix. We brought it over to React Router and we just probably never should have recommended it in React Router. You never actually needed it, but we've kind of always been like, oh, we want your React Router code to feel very much like a Remix code. We want those paradigms to be the same. I think we made a mistake there in like recommending defer in the docs because it wasn't actually doing much. It was doing one thing, which I can actually show you real quick too. So let's start that.
Oh, there's. Whew, I was really nervous.
Cool. So here's our defer. Now everything's working fine. So watch this. If I revalidate, if you remember before when we revalidated, everything updated in lockstep, like all 5 of these things. If I revalidate now without defer, I think we should. Oh, I was expecting these to re-fall back. Because what we did with defer, when you return something with defer, we actually knew that it was deferred. We knew there were promises in there.
Yeah.
And we would wait inside, like while the loader was running, we would wait for them all to resolve because we didn't want these to flip back to fallbacks. I was expecting the default suspense behavior there to flip over, but I think basically by removing defer, we're kind of giving you control. You can control. What do I want to do this as? Can I just do like key equals data? So if we put a key on here, this key has to be a string. Yeah, what is that?
Oh, it can't be. Because data could be null.
Yeah, let's do this. I don't know if this will work, but essentially normally like you can tell React to fall back. We have state in here. You can tell React when to fall back again if something changes. Otherwise, it will try to reuse existing fallbacks.
That's so interesting. Okay.
So if I put a key on that, let's see if this is the first one, right? Lazy one. Let's see if that. No, that's not actually changing there. So to play with that. But,
no worries.
Yeah. What we're doing now is we are no longer like we had opinions before. Our opinion was deferred data on revalidations will not trigger fallbacks. And that is generally the correct behavior when you're revalidating it. You don't want these values to keep flipping back to a spinner, back to data, back to a spinner, back to data most of the time. There are use cases we've found, like folks have filed issues and discussions being like, hey, like, what if I want that? What if my UI should fall back? So in V7, we basically said, like, we're not making a decision there anymore. Like, it's in your hands to decide when to fall back by giving a key prop to your suspense boundary.
Nice. Okay.
Get rid of that guy. Cool. So now in my HMR is all kind of weird there. It's like doubling up on the page. To do is make sure everything is still working. Cool. So I think we are updated to V7 at this point. What did we change? Got a bunch of stuff there. Yeah, got rid of defer, updated all of our imports, but we haven't made any other code changes other than that, and we're good. We have a working V7 pre-release, so we can commit that. Update to V7 pre-release. Okay, so we jump back over here, updated the V7, changed all of our imports, everything's good. Now we can get to the fun stuff and adopt the Vite plugin and route the So the Vite plugin, we're going to need some new packages that come along with React Router V7. So I'm going to go back to package.json. You see right now, the only dependency we have is this one. We're going to want 2 new ones, and we're going to want them as one is a dev dependency. And it's at React Router, the namespace. And dev is basically where the Vite plugin lives. And then I think we want node just for the runtime. So it knows whether it's.
So even I've seen people be confused about this as well. So even though we're still going to be like probably doing spa mode to start, you still have to have the node runtime. I think that kind of trips people up. What's the
especially for like, and that's like what we'll talk about when we get to spa mode. But we're still, and I wanted to do this.
Oh no.
When you do spa mode, like we still have a server build because we use that to render your initial index HTML page. We do that rendering at build time on the server. So you need those server APIs. It doesn't get used in the runtime stuff, but it is used at build time.
Okay.
Let's do that. 700 pre2, and I forgot my save exact. the same for dev, and we'll do this dev dependency. Cool.
Sweet.
Pre2. All right. And then we want to come over to our Vite config, and we want to say.
You cleaned up the other Vite config that
was
originally.
Okay. That was for our like in repo development.
That was wild. I was trying to figure out what was going on there, but that makes a lot more sense.
We no longer need the React plugin. We're going to get that from the remix or from the React Router 7 Vite plugin. And that's React Router dev. And I think, what do we call it here?
It's dev/Vite, first of all.
Vite,
and then I think it's just React Router.
Yeah. These names messed up there. Perfect. So now we're going to replace a React plugin with the React Router Vite plugin. And then we're going to need a routes TS file, but I think this should yell at us. Just kind of show what this looks like. Yeah. And we need our root file. So we need two things. Now, once you go to the Vite plugin, you need two things that your app already has. The Vite plugin just doesn't know about. So the first thing you need is a route tree. So we currently do this in our main TSX. Like this tree is basically what's going to move over into routes TS. All of the rest of the stuff in here is going to be handled automatically. So when you're using the Vite plugin and spa mode, you're not going to have to render like the create root stuff anymore. That's going to be handled by like the built-in entry client, entry server stuff. You are not going to have to render the router provider. That's an entry client via hydrated router. This will be part of your initial route mod. So we probably will move this over to the layout route. HMR is going to be handled for you. And then you also need to tell React Router Vite plugin what your sort of like root document looks like. So in a React Router spa in V6, you're generally only you're hydrating this div and below. The Vite plugin, you're going to hydrate the entire document. So we're going to have to move all of this over to our root TSX. So let's start with that. Let's do this. I'm going to create a new app directory. I don't know if we've made this customizable yet. And if we are going to or not.
Yeah.
I think right now it might depend on app root TX and app routes TS.
Yeah.
So we had two new files, and then let's do the root first.
You can certainly change app. I know that. You can change that to cold source or whatever you want to. But yeah, I don't know about the actual name of those files.
I want that in source. I want that out of source. There you go. So it's actually, it's a sibling source directory.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That makes sense. It would be also nice, just a random tangential thought. If like, you know how we have like remix reveal and it reveals like your client. It would be cool to have just like a remix. I don't know how to do it, but like some just simple command that just like creates the typical route and the typical routes. It's a little thing, but it's just like
in an existing app, reveal.
Just because you're like, because the experience is like, oh, I need route. Okay, I do that. And then you're like, oh, I need routes. Okay, and then do that. Okay, how does route? Now I'm in the documentation. Now I'm trying to figure out how routes work. So just
that makes sense. So we're going to export a default function from our root. Export default function root. Don't need a doc type. That'll come from spa mode. So our root component is essentially just what index.html used to do in your spa. Okay. You're just going to render that via the plugin now.
Nice.
Char_set gets a capital S to comply with JSX. And then now you also don't need this anymore, right? So this is going to get changed to remix scripts. Right. So the Vite plugin, React Router scripts, the Vite plugin is going to manage that for you.
Nice.
Pull that from React Router. This is actually going to be an outlet, no longer div ID app. So that's where we're going to actually like put the contents.
I love this in terms of just like the diff story that we get to tell here. Like I feel like this makes it so clear like what these things are, which is really cool.
Then eventually, we're not going to bother with this today, but eventually you'll add meta and links to when you want to opt into managing the head from your app. But I don't want to do that now because you might already be using something like React Helmet, or you might have your own solution to that. Those are opt-in APIs you can use, like if it makes sense for your team. You don't need to use them in order to like get to the Vite plugin.
Very cool. I think I had an issue with the CSS, but I'll bring it up if I notice it when we do this without links. But yeah,
we do have that is one of the things we'll move over. Like basically, this main index.html is gone. Right, we want to get rid of that because root's going to handle it, and then root's also going to basically take over kind of what main TSX did in some sense. So what you might have missed is just moving this index CSS import over to root.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let's go ahead and import that from root. So that applies. And I did, I don't know if you noticed, I made the background light gray so that I would know if we lost our CSS.
It was maybe once I built or something. I
Yeah.
I could have been doing something goofy, but yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right. So we took care of the CSS. We are not going to have to worry about this. We're not going to have to worry about this. We are going to need a route tree. So I'm going to go ahead and take this guy, just copy it, and go over to routes TS. And what's this? This is port route config, I think it's called.
Yeah. That seems right.
From React. Dev routes, did I get it right?
I think so.
There we go. And then export const routes route config equal. And it's not going to like these lazy things, so we'll fix that. We don't have a convert. But what I do want to show you, and fallback. Let's go ahead and move that over. So I'm going to move this fallback up into the root, actually. So, right, so we talked about like we want that to be delivered and shown as soon as possible. We don't necessarily want it in a route down here that might get lazily loaded. So we're going to put that fallback up in the root. The root is present on every route. And in spa mode, the root is what's going to get rendered for us when we build the page. So we're going to actually go take the implementation of that fallback component out of main and move it into root.
Cool.
And then here, we're going to just call it hydrate fallback because it's part of a route module now. And then also while we're in here, this just sort of this is a remix API best practice. We're going to use layout. So export function. Layout. Children. Come on, there we go. And then
we should encourage that.
So layout is just basically like I want to render all of my different anything that root might render. I want it to be inside of this common layout. Root can render three things. It can render the component in the happy path. It can render the error boundary if something went wrong, and it can render this hydrate fallback when it's loading stuff. So we want all three of those to go in. So they'll be the children prop here. That means that our component is now just return outlet. And our hydrate fallback is just this little like skeleton spinner thing.
Yeah, I like that.
So that's root. Back over to main. We can now get rid of this guy. We took care of that. And then if we go to routes TS, we don't need hydrate fallback there on our layout. And then we can change these to just path, right? So this, sorry, not path, file.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yep. So routes TS is basically
doing I didn't even see that coming. That's so
doing
cool.
what we were manually doing with this. Watch this.
Dude.
File.
I love it. That's so good.
Cool. So like routes TS is tell me the path to your routes and tell me the file that you define that route implementation into, and I'll do the rest. And essentially all that means is internally, we're just code splitting those and wrapping them in route.lazy the same way you would have done manually, but we're going to plug into it. And you notice we didn't use any of the route helpers. Like you can define your tree in routes TS the same way you did in JSON with create browser router. The helpers make it much cleaner on the eyes. So we can go ahead and make that change too. But you don't have to go farther than this.
We're
going to do it.
It's good as it is.
Kind of nice. So we'll need what? We'll need
probably route and index, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's probably all we need. So when a route, when it has a path and a file, you'll use the route helper. And the first parameter is going to be the path. So here's path of / route layout, and then it gets an array of children. So
I found that like Copilot and LLMs like figure this out so quickly. Once you do it once for them, there's like,
they do?
that's all you want. Yeah. Like, so I've been using Cursor a lot more, and it's like it made these parts just like a joke. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, you did so much. Like, so I'm like nervously going back over. But
we replaced index with index. We can replace this one. This can be another route with path of to-dos and a file of that, and then a child array. This is another route with a path of ID, file there. That, close you. And then this is, again, another route with a path of deferred. Don't need an extra one. Get it? Cool.
Nice.
So much easier on the eyes to look at these. I want to like, I hate when it like auto collapses. Like,
Oh yeah.
Make it long. There you go. If I make it long enough, now I can see the children one. But yeah, most of the time, this just sort of prettier auto formats this really nicely, so you can see like, all right, I've got a route index. This could honestly, there's no. I bet this works.
Could that just be layout? Yeah.
Layout routes don't add any URL things, so this can just be layout.
That's right. Yeah.
So
then it will find the index as the home.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it blows up, we'll come back and change that.
Sure.
But that slash shouldn't be needed. Like we know there's a leading slash. Cool.
Yeah.
So we've got the same thing, but now this is really powerful because this is saying like, here's a module, and now the Vite plugin can use this to determine what routes do I have to like compile. I have to code split on all these. I use those to create my server and client side routers. And then it also uses this as the input to the type gen stuff, which we'll look at next.
Sweet.
So did we get it all? Main should be able to go away now. I don't need any of this. So delete main TSX. Oh, I made one mistake. These are still sitting over here in source. So just to show you we shouldn't have to do that, I'm going to go ahead and just point to the right ones. We'll move them over. Like generally, you'll have app routes TS right next to your app routes. But again, like we want this to be minimal changes. Like you shouldn't have to like restructure your entire repo right off the bat in order to adopt it. So let's see if that works. npm run dev.
Excuse me.
Adding isbot. Cool. And oh yeah, my index CSS import is wrong because root TSX is there. So that's also got to come from source. Build that again. Which one is wrong now? Cannot find upgrade source routes home. Oh, they need extensions, don't they? I did that wrong too. .tsx. Yeah. Wonder if that's like a hard requirement or not. Hey, look at that.
Nice.
Cool. So yeah, so we've now got a working React Router v7 and Vite plugin app. We still have our CSS. You see we got the gray background. The app should be functional. Delete. Add some more to-dos. Cool, that's working. You're deferred. Those are all running good. Awesome. So yeah, so that the main difference here, right? Like that, that's pretty smooth. There's two things. Move your index HTML over to a root TSX and move your routes definition from your create browser router call over to a routes TS. Delete index HTML, delete main.tsx. Move your CSS imports into root, move your fallbacks into root. There's a couple things that if you had those in your main file, you move them over. But largely, like we didn't, again, no functional changes to our application code here. We're just kind of restructuring some things for the build for the Vite plugin.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why do we need isbot again? Sorry, I feel like I should know this by now.
That's for, let's show off a npx react router reveal. Use that command we were just talking about. So like I said, the Vite plugin will do some things for you internally that you used to do manually. You don't always need to have the code. So if running reveal spits out these two files that like sort of inherently are part of your application, just, you don't need to have them if you don't want to change from the default. Entry server is the server entry point to render your like a given request. When a request comes in, this is what renders the React output on the server. We use isbot to determine essentially should we enable streaming or not. You turn off streaming for bots because they're not necessarily guaranteed to like wait for all the streamed contents to come down. With the out of order streaming, it's not, if the bot's not like running JavaScript correctly, it's not going to put things in the right spot. So it's generally, and I think this is just a React recommendation from their docs.
That makes sense.
Is essentially just, hey, if this is a bot user agent coming in, just wait for everything to be done and send the full HTML at once. Don't stream down chunks and stuff like that. Otherwise, if it's not a bot, we use the on shell ready callback for pipeable stream, which means render the shell and flush it down and then use streaming for the rest of it. So it's one of those things that it's used by a file inside of React Router and sort of like the runtime. It's not necessarily a file you'll have in your code base because you don't need to keep these around if you don't intend to customize them at all.
Cool. Okay. Sweet. Makes sense.
Get rid of that because we don't need it. And then just where your entry client is essentially the hydrating step that you used to do in main TSX, that gets done by entry client. Again, you don't need to manage this file, and it's just the same thing. It's hydrating the entire document using the hydrated router component, which internally creates a browser router and renders router provider.
Cool.
Get rid of that. So let's look at the diff. A whole bunch of package JSON stuff, but let's do this instead. Get status. So we deleted index.html, and that largely moved to app root TSX. We deleted main, which had our route definition. That largely moved to app routes TS. Added the Vite plugin. Installed some of the dependencies. So add dot. Now, if we do that, you'll see the new one. So 2 new files, 2 deleted files, and basically a modified Vite config.
Sweet.
Adopt the Vite plugin. Cool.
Nice.
So that's this one, Vite plugin and routes TS, and then the last step to get us. And this there are more steps, right, on that like React Router highway we talk about. There's more you can do after this, but this is essentially getting you to like what we will probably consider like the idiomatic React Router 7 SPA setup is using the type gen stuff, using the Vite plugin. So this is where we'll stop in this one, but I hope that in our docs we'll go a lot farther with like, what if you want SSR? What if you want some pre-rendering? What if you want different things, meta links, stuff like that?
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense that it's like kind of like the continuation. Like here's now all the stuff that you've enabled. But yeah, this is definitely you're there. You've arrived.
This one, awesome. I'm gonna cheat here just because I don't have this memorized yet. I believe it's in our release notes for V7. Adopting the type. So there's like a plugin.
Yeah, we need to make a doc for this.
So this is for, if anyone's curious on the stream here, this is in our release next branch on GitHub in the changelog. Like we do have our draft V7 release notes here. So if you're playing with the pre-release, you can come here to see like the full set of release notes that as of the current pre-release. What we want is this one. So there's a section here on type safety improvements, and this is what we're going to do now. And it tells us here, so here's the setup for how to set up this type gen type safety. So add a React router to gitignore. Cool, done. Add React router type gen to your type check command in package JSON. So type check, which we don't even actually have in this app, so I'm going to add it. Normally, your type check is probably just something like TSC. You're just running TSC on your code base. We want that type check for apps using the type gen stuff to actually run this React router type gen command. That's going to create all of the types for your routes based on these modules. So you'll have like up-to-date loader data and component props and things like that. We just want to run that every time you run type gen. And then there's a TypeScript plugin that'll run that like constantly while you're developing. And I believe we're also planning to add a watch.
We will
to this. So you think if you don't want the plugin, you feel more comfortable, you can just kind of run that as a sidecar process. So add React router type gen, done. Configure TS config for the generated types. So add, basically this type gen is going to create types in this new git-ignored React router folder. We need to tell TypeScript to look there when it's compiling types. So I'll put that in include, and then we also want to add, to make our imports a little easier, we want to add that types directory to root dirs, which it looks like I don't currently have.
I don't think you even have one, so yeah, you can set the whole thing up.
Root dirs. Let's add dot, and then let's add this one. Okay, so now TypeScript should know to look there. Go ahead and let's run our type gen real quick. So npx React router type gen. Cool. So now we should see here, if we look in these guys, we've got, oh, you know what? We might run into a similar thing I ran into yesterday.
Yeah.
But basically these types are essentially just looking at the route modules and then creating everything. So they're able to say, okay, here's a route module home. Does that route have a loader? If it does, what's the type, the return type of that loader function? and that becomes the loader data type. And then the loader data type can get passed into the component props strongly typed. If it doesn't have a loader, it can determine that, and it can tell you that it's going to be, undefined. If it has both a loader and a client loader, it can give you the right props based on whether we're rendering on the server or the client or hydrating. So this is basically a much better version of what we used to do with the generics. Let's see if these imports work. I think it was getting a little confused with my like app and source directories when I tried this yesterday. To put in the TypeScript plugin goes into tsconfig as well. Plugins, React Router dev, cool. And then, yeah, VS Code also we need VS Code to use the workspace version of TypeScript. So let's create a, VS Code settings JSON. Nope, not in types, put that at the root directory. Come on, go up top. Oh, there you go. Here, settings JSON. That'll use the version of TypeScript in the repo.
Yeah, a weird VS Codeism.
Cool. Now,
there's also that's even missing something else, but just is it like an enable or prompt or something like that?
Do you know if it matters? Does it break things?
I don't remember. We'll see. Anyway, all this stuff I had a good conversation with Pedro about all this yesterday, so hopefully it's all going to get a little better.
Let's go ahead and we'll try to we'll try to use this. So now basically what we're going to do is what we were doing before is we said we had this client loader and we were just sort of saying like, hey, here's the return type of that. We defined it up here. And then down here, we were just casting our loader data. So this is a pretty common React Router v6 way of doing it. We didn't have the generics on these in v6, and the generics are under the hood, really just casting it themselves. And in React Router, there's no serialization over the network, so we don't have to worry about like dates getting converted to strings and all that. So in React Router, you can generally just cast in v6. That gets a lot better with this type story. So what we can do is import star as out from, and this one is plus types, dot slash types home. Is that going to get it? So we have route. Let's see what's on there. Route dot. Yeah, see, I don't think it's getting it because it's like off in that source directory. So I'm going to cheat here real quick, and I'm going to probably should do this at a. We should be able to handle this. I don't think they should have to live there. For now, I think I'm just going to move them into app routes. Yeah, actually, maybe we can do this in where are these are in React Router types app and source routes. If I go to maybe I just change my TS config. Let's keep that, but then let's just go types source routes. For me. It doesn't seem to want to get that. So I want to do this. I'm going to say these are route.component props. But yeah, I don't think it's quite picking that up. So here, we're going to just take these, these routes, and I'm going to move them into app routes. Let's make a note on that because that's something that I don't want to have to enforce that in order to.
Yeah, I think, and I do think that something Pedro talked about will avoid that, the way that where the routes are going to like get generated and stuff. So yeah, that'll be something good to circle back on though, and make sure that story's good.
I'm going to move everything. Move the index file over, basically just changing source to the app. So move sleep index to-dos all over, get rid of our source directory. And now we probably have like let's double check. This is no longer coming from source. That's dot slash. Where are these guys getting? That should be fine, right? You don't like sleep? You should. That's weird. Maybe it was just a reload the window. Reload window. Those are both there. Oh no, these are siblings now, I think. No, that's good. Okay. Sleep is good. These are all fine. Cool. Let's see if our build works. And here. Yeah, there we go. Missed some. Yep, routes TS didn't change those. So these are now change .source to just .slash. So now that all these routes are in app right next to routes, this can just be .slash routes. I don't need to go up into that source directory anymore. That build. Expected but found route. Oh, oops. Yep. I meant to get rid of you. We're going to add you in just. Yeah. There we go. All right. Cool. Back to work state. Now I've got those. We can go do this. So import star as route from close. And this is .slash plus types home. Now let's see if we get this. Got that. There we go.
It's looking good.
Now you can see all the stuff on there. So we have from the type gen, we know the arguments to our action function, the type of our action data, same thing for the client loader and action. We have component props, error boundary props, hydrate fallback props, the params for this route, and the actual just like the route itself. So we want here, this is our component. We're going to say, I want the component props here. And now instead of using these hooks and in Remix doing like type of loader and letting Remix the generic cast it, we actually just get loader data right here. So we can actually just rename this here if we want. We called it data and component. So we're going to get rid of the hook and just grab it from the props. And now what's nice is that we don't, I mean, you can certainly keep this around, but we only had this type defined before so that we could cast our use loader data. We don't really need this type. And we also don't really need to tell the client loader what it returns. We can just say, hey, return whatever you need. And then this is infer, right? So we have date. Oh yeah. I was like, that shouldn't be a string, but I'm actually casting it. So dates should be dates. Here we'll call it 2
down there,
in render. So our loader data comes across as a date. If I add message, hello, we should, I think, automatic. There you go. So like we get those sort of right up there. That TS, the plugin, the VS Code is running that type gen in the background. So now we don't have to manually manage those types. We don't have to do the casting. We can just grab them. Same thing up here. We're not using any of these, but route client loader args, and then we get if we had a server loader and wanted to call it, we can pull those props up. Right here, we should have the request.
Wait, does it know there actually that the server loader doesn't exist?
No, I don't know. No, that one.
Promise of undefined at least, but yeah, I should probably know that there is no server loader.
Yeah, what do? If you were to pull that in and call it, it just throws an error at that point. Like there's something you're calling an API that doesn't exist. But yeah, that is
not a big deal. Yeah.
Generally, these your routes just get a little smaller, right? If we lost the manual type, we lost the declaring the return type here, and then we lost the cast and the hook call down here.
Sweet.
So we can do that sort of little by little. Here I go. Just copy that import. Now we should have types defer. And these are, I believe these are just named. It's always // plus types dot, and then it's the name of the file. So defer TSX defer, home TSX is types.home. So here we're going to go ahead and same thing. Just say, I don't care to manually define that anymore. Here we can say loader data, and we'll kind of rename it to data so we don't have to change our component. Route.component props. And then get rid of that. What do you not like?
Oh, these are not types. Yeah. So if you go up.
That's right. I can.
Yeah, you get it.
I'll just infer that here. I always forget if that goes before or after for those like inline functions.
Oh, I always forget too. I just changed it to string on this one because it can only be a string. Yeah. Because that type isn't even like, I guess now you can pass those anything, so it's technically more correct.
Yeah, that's true. That would, actually a little surprised that.
Oh man. Yeah.
Or else t equals. So I actually kind of hate inline functions sometimes.
I would just change the promise to just say return to string.
Return to promise string. There we go. Promise.
Yeah, I think that's
the other way to do it.
because this is fake data anyway. It doesn't matter to type it super robustly.
And I think that was it. These, what do we have here? I actually haven't thought about what happens for those. These,
Yeah.
I think this might have to be, I don't know that we can actually infer that because we don't specifically know which value we're getting. It's kind of like the value higher in the tree.
Got it.
Well, we really, the preferred pattern here, this is just like that hook is only if you really want to put this in another component. The other way to do this is actually use a render prop here. So you get data, and I believe this should be properly typed. No, that's not shipped yet. Remember, we just in React Router 6 that we're shipping next week. We've brought the data inference over from Remix. So yeah, again, if we did this on Tuesday, we'll be able to infer here that this is a promise resolving to a string. Data will get typed as a string.
Okay, good deal.
Release those changes.
Okay, yeah, cool.
That's the way to do typed stuff, and eventually that's all going away in favor of React use. So the await component's probably not long-lived once React 19 comes out.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, we did defer, we did home layout. I don't actually think has any typing stuff in here because there's no loader. To do. Import star as route from types dot to do. No. And then let's see, client loader. Oh yeah, all right, so this one we always print, so that's nice. So we can use client loader args there instead of loader function args. And then we no longer have to tell it what the client loader returns. Right, and then down here, we should be able to do component props. And what do we call it? Use loader data to do. We call it to do here instead of data.
And you just pull out the params there too, which is nice.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Good call. Yeah, those props also, we not pass the params in. You don't need to use params hook. Cool. Make sure to-dos are still working. Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one to call out there too. So we basically got rid of the use of two of the hooks there. You can get your data and your params right there from the props. And then the next one.
You can also delete lines 8 through 10. They're no longer, that was just a type checking thing.
Like 8 through 10?
Yeah. So that check didn't even matter. That you never were going to render this without the params ID. Yeah. It was just to make TypeScript happy.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah, so the old params used to not be typed, right? Params in prior to the type gen, params were an object and whatever keys may or may not be there. Now with the type gen, we are able to know that in this todo.tsx file, because it is defined in routes.tsx as expecting an ID param, we know that we can strongly type that params has ID on there and nothing else. That's pretty cool. I forgot about that one. So yeah, we don't need those checks anymore. We're just sure the params ID is going to be a string if we're in here. Nice. Last one, I think, is just this to-dos route. Import star route from types dot to-dos plural. How to my rare? There you go. That's computers trying to be helpful again. All right, client action will change to client action args. And client loader, no longer need to put the return value on that, and it's not using any of its params. To-dos list will be route.component props, and we are using loader data, calling it to-dos. And that is it for there. Yep. Yeah, these are just normal components typed manually. There's no inference going on there. This, oh, here we go. Route dot error boundary props. And I think we just passed the error here, right? Yeah, cool. And again, yeah, we don't We don't know what it is. So this is where you would probably do something here and say like error instance. You have to do some type narrowing here because we were just casting it before.
Right.
But really, like, you can throw anything you want at any time. So we really can't know what that's going to be. So normally this looks something like, hey, if this is an error, print the message. If it's a route error response, that's if you were like, that's for 4s and 400s. Generally there, you'll say like error.status. Status text. So like 404 not found. And then like maybe you throw in the actual like error dot. The data is the whatever got put in the body of that thrown response. So this is generally like the pretty common like type narrowing thing for an error boundary is show the message if it's an actual error, throw the status on the message if it was an error response. Otherwise, we're not really sure what you threw. So deserialize however you can.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense.
I think all right. I think we got all of these routes are now got some unused imports here. I don't need any of those hooks anymore. Layout didn't have anything. Any unused, yeah. Get rid of action function args and loader data and route error. And we still have a working app. Click on one, get down to the to-do ID route. Nice. So again, it's something we can ship.
Yeah.
And look at the diff here. So this one, this is probably the biggest diff, right? This was, and I could have split this up, but this is like enabling the type gen, right? We've made public VS config. We add that VS Code settings JSON to enable the plugin. We could have split off. Oh, and we also moved the source directory into the app directory to make that simpler. So really, there were like 3 things here that I'll go back after this and split those into commits. But it's like move your app directory into source. Enable type gen, commit that, right? Because you can enable it and not use it anywhere. You can keep using the hooks, and then you can go file by file and start to adopt the type gen. Again, like iteratively. You don't have to adopt it all in one big thing. So this is again where we just did a bunch of changes. These can be like 7 different shippable commits, right? To set up the type gen and then adopt it route by route, like in 5 separate things.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And now you can just turn server-side rendering on, and you change all your client loaders to loaders, and you're good.
That's right. We can do that. You know what's funny is we actually are server rendering right now because
I know, right?
Are false.
The client loaders still, I think the to-dos technically are like in local storage, so you do have to.
Yes. Yeah. We are. So this is running as a server rendered app that's rendering. You can actually say here. I go to network. And I go to this, and I stopped the dev server. What we should see, type gen. No, I want to run dev. Go to this here. Come on. Oh, I'm not even gonna be able to like view page source.
There you go.
What we should see. Can I pretty print this line wrap? Can't really pretty print it, but here you go. What you see here is we are server rendering that hydrate fallback because we didn't set SSR false. Now that's like you can play with that. If you turn on SPA mode, you can decide what gets server rendered and what doesn't. But yeah, what we really want if you're going full SPA mode with this app is when you adopt the plugin, you probably want to set SSR false here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And now when you actually build. I didn't try this yet, so hopefully that works. Now we look at our build directory. What we're going to have is we don't have a build server, right? We do create a server build only to do the initial rendering. You see right here, we render in SPA mode. We render out that index HTML that you can deploy. So we use a server build to create that, and then we delete the server build directory. Now you've got, just like you had before with your Vite thing, you've got an output directory that's got an index HTML. It's got all the right script imports and everything it needs to render your app. So all this stuff in there. Just format this a little better. No.
Oh, there it is. You just scrolled over, I think.
There we go. Cool. So yeah, this is
okay,
going to be very similar to what Vite would have been spitting out for you before, in that it resolves and hashes all your imports and stuff like that. So
awesome.
this is kind of the end of the spa mode migration from V6.
Yep. Yeah, you're there. You got great types now. You got everything automatically lazy loading for you. You've got just structure to your application that didn't necessarily exist in this one before. So yeah, pretty cool.
Nice. Glad that worked.
And then and you could add meta tags, and you could handle the meta and the links and all that stuff as well. Like we didn't even touch that. You have
there's a whole bunch
gamut of
doing from here, which we'll get into the docs.
Sweet. Awesome. All right.
Any questions come up in the chat or anything while we were going through the end there?
Nothing. I addressed a couple things. Nothing too
cool
focused on this piece.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we addressed everything as we were going. So yeah. But if there are more questions, please join our Discord, reach out there. That's helpful. If you actually do have a bug, please create, reproductions and share them with us either on Discord or open up a ticket, especially if it's for the non-pre-release versions. We definitely want tickets for those. But yeah, hope this was helpful and enjoyable. And I don't know, might do more of these as we have stuff to show and to think through out loud. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining.